We're Ron and Leah, old steaders in our 50s and 60s. Not modern steaders, but old steaders. Because the old ways are just who we are. We spent the last 34 years together. We've been serving the Lord for 30 of those years, raising our 4 sons together, who have chosen to continue to live on our homestead and build it as a family. Homesteading has been in our hearts for the last 24 years, years before it was trending on YouTube and social media. We've been living off-grid for years as well, way before that was trending too. Not because it was the in thing, but because it was in our hearts, and we were drawn to it, the slowness and the independence of it. We are a couple who love our family, embrace the old ways, old folks, and old faith in God Almighty. Come along and join us on our journey as we share our faith, our life, and strive to encourage others to follow their hearts down the old paths. Hi guys, it's Leah with Family Heritage Living. Boy, it's been a long time since I've been behind this camera, and there's a lot to fill you all up on, but I'm not going to spend too much time doing that in this video today. Today I'm making a birthday cake for Ron, and we're making an old-fashioned chocolate cake with caramel and chocolate chips. So I thought I'd share the recipe. It is one of our favorites if we really want to have enough insulin spike to cause sugar coma. But just real quick, we've been home since, July 9th, I guess. We sold our home downstate, praise God, July 5th. The last video I made talked about how an offer had fallen through, and we weren't sure what to do at that time. Well, we didn't even have the house back on the market. I think that video went up on like a Sunday, and we already were getting the house up on the market like the next day, and the next day we had 3 showings and 2 offers, and praise God, the house sold. So we've been really busy and just trying to settle back in. Ron's already made 1 trip back downstate when we came back home to finish emptying out the storage units. So all of our responsibilities downstate are done, and we are so elated because now we can focus on here. We can focus on our home here and what God has in store for us, and we're just all excited and happy. We've had some additions to our family, and we'll share those with you later. You can see behind me I have a different stove. I still have my wood cook stove, but we decided that it was the right time and opportunity to go ahead and get a propane stove. You know, we use that wood stove. Those that have watched us for a long time, we use that wood stove 24 hours a day in the cooler months. It's what heats our home, it's what heats our water, it's what cooks our food. In the warmer months, even in the summer, we're still using that cook stove. So even though it might not be 24 hours a day, it's definitely 365 days a year. And that can become very hard. What it does is it'll, of course, heat up our home, and it makes it harder to cool it down in the evening, even when it's been out for hours. Usually what I will do is I will start the fire first thing in the morning, get all my water pans on, decide what we're going to eat for the day if it needs to be cooked, and do that. And so by noon, the fire is out. I'm talking like even 90-degree days. And I know that sounds crazy. And I guess it might be, but in reality, that's how it was done for years and years and years. So we just adapted. This is what we've had to do, and this is what we've embraced. But we also know that there are conveniences, such as propane stoves, that will make life so much easier, and it has. This has been a godsend, even for like our coffee water in the morning, even on super hot days. And we would have a little propane, we had a little propane 2-burner thing, and that was all fine and good. But we didn't have it in the house, and we couldn't use it when it rained. We didn't have anything built for it. I know, we could do all that stuff. I know this, okay, but we didn't. So this, I can cook in this, I can bake in this. We start our water in the morning. Now, if I have a lot of cleaning to do and need a lot of hot water, I do start up that wood stove. We usually try to do it really early in the morning and only have to run it a couple hours because I don't have to gauge the, whatever we're eating and stuff through that. So we have some other fun things to share with you guys, I guess, as we start to upload some videos. And just lots of things to share. But for today, we are doing the caramel chocolate cake. Let me show you what we need. For an old-fashioned chocolate cake, you're going to need 3/4 cup butter, 1 2/3 cup sugar, just granulated sugar, 3 eggs, vanilla. You're also going to need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, 2/3 cup cocoa, but I usually end up using a cup of cocoa. You're also going to need 1 teaspoon salt, 1 1/4 teaspoon baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon baking powder. And if you use your own baking powder mix, or if you just, end up throwing it all together, like down there I have the baking soda, and the little clumps there are actually cream of tartar and cornstarch to make my baking powder. You also need 1 1/3 cup water. All right, we are battling with the late season fly season here. I thought we were all done, and I set up to do this cake, and they're back. So if you see me shooing them away, just know this is part of living in the UP. All right, so the first thing we're going to need is we need our butter. And that, see how soft that is? And the reason not only do you want butter soft when you're making a cake, but the reason you want it this soft, the way I do it, is because I do it by hand. You can use an electric mixer, and by all means, if that's what you have, your butter can be a little bit firmer than that if you want. But for me, because I have to beat it with my muscles, it's got to be this way. All right, so here's the butter. Then we're going to add the sugar to our butter. And I will put, I know I say this a lot, I will remember to put this recipe under the information under the video. Okay, so I usually start off with a spatula of some sort. Now I like, because when I was downstate, I did take advantage of my sister's electric mixer, but since I don't use one up here, my favorite way to start a type of batter that I have to beat is with a flat spatula. And then by the time I get the eggs in, I switch. I'm going to show you what I use in case you prefer to do things by hand and you haven't used one of these. All right, and then the eggs. All right, now, so I'm going to show you these two right here. I got this one years ago. I got it at, I don't know, a garage sale or an antique store. And I don't know if you can see that right there, but this actually reads a batter beater. Let's see if we can get it a little closer. Because that's what it was intended for, to beat batters. Somebody had once seen that and said, well, that was a fish fryer. And I thought, well, it didn't make any sense to me, but I didn't know. So I went looking, and sure enough, this would be to scoop your fish out of like a deep fryer or a deep fry pan to let it drain off. But it has the same, as you can see, premise as my batter beater. So that's what I use, and that's what I love. I used this for the longest time, even when this was broken, but it's starting to break off now, so I quit using that. So if you don't have one and you do this by hand, boy, this sure makes it nice to aerate your batters. If you're using an electric mixer and you haven't done too many homemade cake batters, you're looking, that's exactly what you're doing, is looking to aerate it. All right, so I'm going to set this aside for just a second. I've got my flour in one container, and I'm going to go ahead and put my cocoa in my flour so it's all mixed in, along with my salt, soda, and baking powder. then I'm going to take my broken beater batter just to mix this up together real quick. That way, because I'm going to alternate the powdered mixture with my water, and this just makes it easier if you put it all into one bowl. You don't have to, and I've on it many a time not, but if I've already got a big enough bowl with my flour in it, I just do. So I'm also going to, before I start putting the flour mixture in, I'm going to put a teaspoon of vanilla. You can of course increase that. I think this one is actually measures a teaspoon and a half. So you just start adding the flour mixture and a little of the water. I get a little wild with my flour here as I'm beating it. Then you just repeat the process until it's all gone. Okay, now oftentimes I will cook, when I make this chocolate cake, just as a chocolate cake with frosting, I will cook this either in a sheet pan or in 2 round cake pans. I do like my cakes to cook thinner normally, but because I'm using this as a, with a caramel on top, I'm going to cook it in a 9 by 13. Make sure you grease or butter your 9 by 13. I'm just using a palm shortening right now. Now when you make this cake and you don't have any butter, you have margarine or shortening, you can absolutely use that. We just prefer butter as our fat in baking, and we like the texture and flavor that it gives. If you've never tried butter in place of a shortening, you should. It's really good. All right, so that looks pretty. Aerated well. And these days I'm gonna get me a flexible spatula. I say that every time I go to scrape something out. I think it's probably been 20 years since I've owned a flexible spatula. I have no idea why I keep forgetting until I'm doing something. Okay, so now we're going to put this in my oven. I've got my propane stove set at 350. Okay. I might have to go back and move that top rack, but I think it'll be okay. I don't think it'll rise much above that pan. Okay, so now what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to do the caramel on that. And I'm going to use maple syrup, real maple syrup, not pancake syrup, but 100% maple syrup. We use it a lot for caramel and toppings, and it cooks down so nice, so beautifully. And this is syrup that Josiah made while we were gone this past sapping season. So I just thought it would be wonderful on top of Ron's cake. And it's really simple. If you don't make your own maple syrup, you can absolutely find them usually at the stores, local stores. They will have them. It's kind of expensive, but it is really good. All right, so you just want a lower flame. You want a good sturdy saucepan. I have a quart of syrup here. I don't know that I'm going to want to use, and see how thick that is already. Josiah cooked this down so beautifully. It's just super nice and thick, so it's going to really reduce my cooking down time on this. When you make a caramel using something like this, you're going to use a cream. You'll use, if you don't have cream, you'll use butter and milk. All right, so you don't want to over stir this, it'll make it crystallize. And if you start to bubble too much, you're not up to temperature, which you want about 230 degrees, just turn your flame down. So even though you may be tempted to stir it because of all the bubbling, just let it go. It'll be just fine. I use a digital thermometer. I know there are those that are much more skilled at the old how to measure without one. I am not that skilled when it comes to candy making, mainly because I've cooked on a wood stove so long and the heat fluctuates so quickly at times. Doing it on a propane or an electric stove is going to be far more dependable for the temperature. And I don't make enough candy to be able to gauge that. So I just use a digital thermometer, and when it gets to 230, I turn it off. Okay, so a couple things that I should mention. The caramel that we make needs to be refrigerated. Okay, it's a simple, quick topping. It's not like a caramel candy. It's a sauce, and so it needs to be refrigerated in order for it to really firm up. Otherwise, it's going to be too warm, and it will never firm. The other thing too, as it cools, you want to stir in that. If you use butter, cream, you want to stir that in occasionally to make sure that the fat molecules aren't coming back together in little clumps. And if they do, it's not really that big a deal, because you can indeed stir it out. Remember when I put it in the oven, I said I didn't think it would rise too far where I had to worry about that second rack. I had one little spot rise enough that it peeled it off when I pulled it out. So that's why my cake looks the way it does. All right, so once the cake is cool, you just take the caramel topping that you made. And I don't know that I'll use all this. These flies, they're driving me crazy. The other thing you can do, and I used to do this, but I found out that it would make the cake too soggy, is punch little holes in it with a straw. In theory, it's good. So oftentimes what I will do is I will reserve some back and then pour it over the slice of cake once I get it on the plate. And then I just take some chocolate chips and sprinkle them on. And there you have it. All right, so you can get this. So I garnished it a little bit more with some caramel and chips, and this is a fabulous treat. You really can't eat a lot of this. If you have a little whipped topping, little fresh cream that you whipped up, goes great on it as well. But it is super rich, and so it's an occasional treat. But it was really good talking with you folks again. I'm glad to be back on YouTube. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, please let me know. And we will see you soon. God bless. So I just wanted to add this in as a footnote because I noticed when I was editing the video, part of it did not record correctly, and that was the part with my cream, adding it to my caramel sauce. Okay, so with this recipe, on the maple syrup, technically I had about 2 cups of maple syrup. I might have had more, but let's just, for sake of argument, say 2 cups if you're going to measure it out. And you would take about a half a cup of cream to that. Now, if you don't have cream like I didn't, and I used butter, to get to the half a cup of cream, I would take a 1/4 cup butter and a 1/4 cup whole milk. Now, I melted my butter and my milk together. It warmed up a little bit. You can just throw your butter right into your maple syrup, and then add your milk slowly if you don't warm it up, to make sure that you don't have a volatile reaction to it, because it can bubble quite severely. So just be really safe with this until you cool that maple syrup down, because that maple syrup is super hot and you don't want to have any messes or anyone get injured. But then once you do that, once you've added your cream or your milk to your maple syrup, once the maple syrup has come up to 230 or about 230, stir that in really well. And then that's when you refrigerate it, and after it cools down, or while it's cooling down, I usually continue to mix it in. I check it every little once in a while and mix it in together. So, all right, I just wanted to add that in there.